The eviction notice arrived on the same day. Olivia Turner's vintage espresso machine finally gave up, sputtering its last pathetic drops of coffee onto the kitchen counter like a dying declaration of war against her entire existence. She stood in her cramped apartment above the bookstore where she worked, staring at the official letterhead with mounting disbelief. The building had been sold. New ownership. All tenants required to vacate within 60 days or sign new leases at rates that made her eyes water. Her current $800 rent would jump to $2,000. In this neighborhood. For this shoebox with its perpetually dripping bathroom faucet and windows that rattled every time a truck passed. "You have got to be kidding me," Olivia said to the empty room, her dark hair falling loose from its messy bun as she shook her head. At 26, she had finally gotten her life somewhat stable. The bookstore job paid enough to cover rent and groceries. She had her routine, her favorite coffee shop 2 blocks away, the elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen who sometimes brought her homemade dumplings. Now some faceless corporation was ripping it all away. She grabbed her phone and dialed the number listed at the bottom of the notice. A smooth, professional voice answered after 2 rings. "Apex Property Management, how may I direct your call?" "I just received an eviction notice, and I need to speak with someone about these insane rent increases," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice level. "One moment, please. Hold music." Classical, pretentious. Another voice came on, equally polished. "This is Jennifer speaking. How can I help you?" Olivia explained her situation, her frustration building with every corporate platitude Jennifer offered in response. Market rates, property improvements, necessary adjustments. All the buzzwords that translated to, "We do not care that you cannot afford to live here anymore." "I want to speak with the owner," Olivia finally said. "The owner does not handle individual tenant concerns. That is what our management company—" "Then I want to speak with your supervisor." "Or their supervisor, someone who can actually make a decision." A pause. "I can schedule an appointment for you to visit our main office. However, I should inform you that the terms of the new leases are not negotiable." Olivia took the appointment anyway, Friday at 10 in the morning. She would have to take time off from the bookstore, but her boss Marcus was understanding about these things. He had been talking about how the whole neighborhood was changing, how the rent on the bookstore's commercial space had tripled in the past 5 years. The week dragged by in a haze of apartment hunting websites and mounting anxiety. Everything in her price range was either an hour away or required she live with 3 roommates in a converted basement. She had done the roommate thing in college. Never again. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, threatening rain. Olivia dressed carefully in the one professional outfit she owned, a navy blazer and matching pants she had bought for her college graduation. She took the bus downtown to the address listed on the appointment confirmation, watching the city transform from her comfortable, slightly shabby neighborhood to the gleaming glass towers of the financial district. Apex Property Management occupied the 15th floor of a building so modern, it looked like it had been designed by someone who thought comfort was a weakness. All sharp angles and cold metal. The receptionist directed her to a waiting area with uncomfortable chairs clearly meant to discourage lingering. Olivia waited 20 minutes past her appointment time, her irritation growing with each passing minute. She was about to march back to the reception desk when a woman in an expensive suit appeared. "Miss Turner, I apologize for the wait. I'm Jennifer. We spoke on the phone. If you will follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Olivia made in a year. Jennifer led her into a conference room with a view of the city that would have been impressive if Olivia were not so angry. "Please have a seat. Can I get you water? Coffee?" "I'm fine. I just want to discuss the lease situation." Jennifer sat across from her, pulling out a folder. "As I mentioned on the phone, the new ownership has set market rate prices for all units. Your building was significantly undercharging for the area." "Undercharging? The bathroom sink has not worked properly in 3 years. The heating is a joke. Last winter I slept in 2 sweaters." "The new ownership plans extensive renovations. The increased rent reflects those improvements." "Improvements I do not need and cannot afford," Olivia said. "I have been a perfect tenant for 4 years. Never late on rent, no complaints, no problems. Does that count for nothing?" Jennifer's expression remained professionally sympathetic but ultimately unmoved. "I understand your frustration, but the decision has been made at the highest level. The owner reviews the numbers, not the individual circumstances." "Then let me talk to the owner." "That is not possible." "Why not? Is he too important to deal with the actual human beings his decisions affect?" The door opened behind Olivia. She turned, ready to tell whoever was interrupting to wait their turn, and the words died in her throat. The man who entered was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair cut precisely and gray eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Olivia's rent, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders, and a frame that suggested he spent considerable time in a gym. He was handsome in that sharp, intimidating way that made her immediately distrustful. This was someone used to getting exactly what he wanted. "Jennifer, I need the Riverside contracts," he said, his voice deep and commanding. Then his eyes landed on Olivia and something flickered across his face. Surprise. Interest. It was gone too quickly to identify. "Mr. Ashford, I apologize. I did not realize you were on this floor today," Jennifer said, standing quickly. "I am just finishing a tenant consultation." Mr. Ashford. The name clicked in Olivia's mind. Isaac Ashford. She had seen it on the eviction notice, the signature at the bottom. "The owner." Olivia stood too, turning to face him fully. "You are Isaac Ashford." His eyes met hers, and she felt a jolt of something she absolutely did not want to feel, awareness, the kind that made her skin tingle and her pulse quicken. No, absolutely not. This man was ruining her life. "I am," he said carefully. "Perfect. I am Olivia Turner, one of the tenants you are evicting. I would love to discuss why you think doubling rent without actually improving anything is acceptable business practice." Jennifer made a small noise of alarm. "Miss Turner, perhaps we should," but Isaac held up a hand, his gaze never leaving Olivia's face. "You live in the Monroe Street building. For now, until you price me out of my own home." Something in his expression hardened. "The rent increase reflects current market rates." The building was being mismanaged by the previous owner. Mismanaged. Or he actually cared about his tenants. He was running the property into the ground. No maintenance, no improvements, no proper management. The building needs significant work. Then do the work and charge reasonable rent. Or is that not profitable enough for you? The air between them felt charged, electric. Isaac's jaw tightened, and Olivia realized with some satisfaction that she had gotten under his skin. Good. He had certainly gotten under hers. "I do not make business decisions based on sentiment," he said, his voice cold now. "The numbers have to work." The numbers. Right. Because that is all that matters, not the woman who will be homeless because you need to add another 0 to your bank account. If you cannot afford market rate rent, there are other neighborhoods. The dismissiveness in his tone made her see red. Other neighborhoods. You mean the ones an hour from my job, the ones where I would not be safe walking home at night. How nice that you can just suggest I upend my entire life like it is nothing. Miss Turner, no one is forcing you to stay. There are always options. Wow, You really have no idea what it is like for normal people, do you? His eyes flashed with something dark and angry. You do not know anything about me. I know you are rich enough to buy buildings and evict people without losing sleep over it. I know you are standing here in a suit that costs more than my monthly rent telling me I have options. That is all I need to know. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension was thick enough to cut. Jennifer looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Isaac's voice, when he spoke again, was controlled but tight with anger. This conversation is pointless. The lease terms stand. You have 60 days to decide whether you are signing or moving. Good day, Miss Turner. He turned and walked out, and Olivia stood there shaking with fury and something else she refused to name. How dare he? How dare he be so cold, so dismissive, so absolutely infuriating, and how dare he be attractive while doing it? That was the worst part. Even furious, even hating everything he represented, she had felt that pull. Those eyes. That presence. No. She pushed the thought away violently. Jennifer was saying something apologetic, trying to salvage the situation, but Olivia barely heard her. She grabbed her bag and walked out, taking the elevator down in a fog of anger. She would find a new apartment. She would figure it out. She always did. And she would never have to see Isaac Ashford's frustratingly handsome face ever again. That was what she told herself on the bus ride home, staring out the window at the rain that had finally started to fall. Isaac stood at his office window 15 floors above the city, staring at nothing and seeing everything. Specifically, he kept seeing angry hazel eyes and dark hair, and a woman who had faced him down without an ounce of fear. Olivia Turner. He had property managers precisely so he would not have to deal with individual tenants. He reviewed numbers, approved budgets, made strategic decisions about his portfolio of real estate holdings. He did not get personally involved. That was the whole point of building a successful company. Delegation. Distance. Yet he had been unable to stop himself from finding her file after she left. 26 years old. Worked at a bookstore called The Reading Room. Perfect payment history. No complaints on record. Single as far as the paperwork indicated. Not that it mattered. It did not matter at all. He had bought the Monroe Street building as part of a portfolio acquisition. 6 properties, all underperforming, all in transitioning neighborhoods. The numbers were clear. With proper management and modernization, they could triple in value within 5 years. It was a smart investment. He made smart investments. That was how he had built his company from nothing into one of the most successful real estate firms in the city by age 32. His phone buzzed. His assistant, Marcus from the bookstore. A detail he would not know for weeks, yet reminding him of his afternoon meetings. Isaac turned from the window and pushed all thoughts of hazel eyes and righteous anger out of his mind. He had work to do. But that night, alone in his penthouse apartment with its view of the entire city glittering below, he found his mind wandering back to her. The way she had stood up to him, the passion in her voice. Most people treated him with deference or fear or calculated friendliness designed to get something from him. She had treated him like an adversary, and something about that had been oddly refreshing, frustrating. He corrected himself. It had been frustrating. She did not understand business. She did not understand that you could not make decisions based on emotion. His father had taught him that lesson young, before the heart attack that had left Isaac to raise his younger sister and build his own path forward. Sentiment was a luxury. Numbers were truth. He poured himself a scotch and tried to focus on the contracts he had brought home. Failed. Poured another drink. Stared at the city lights. This was ridiculous. He had met her for 5 minutes. She hated him. He had no interest in someone who clearly despised everything he had built. By next week, she would be a signature on a lease or a vacant apartment, and his life would continue exactly as it had before. He almost believed it. Olivia spent the weekend looking at apartments that ranged from depressing to actively dangerous. Sunday evening found her sitting on her apartment floor surrounded by printouts and rental listings, feeling defeated. Mrs. Chen had brought over dumplings and tea, patting her hand and saying everything would work out, but for the first time in years, Olivia was not sure she believed it. Her phone rang. Her best friend Sophie, calling from Portland where she had moved last year for a job opportunity. "Tell me something good," Sophie said when Olivia answered. "I have been in back-to-back meetings all day and I need to hear about literally anything else." Olivia filled her in on the eviction notice, the meeting with the property management company, the encounter with Isaac Ashford. "Wait, back up," Sophie said. "What did you say his name was?" "Isaac Ashford. Why? Holy hell, Liv. I just looked him up. Do you have any idea who he is?" "A rich jerk who thinks people are just numbers on a spreadsheet. Try one of the city's most successful real estate developers under 35. Self-made. Started with one property after his dad died and built an empire. There are articles about him. Forbes did a profile last year. Great. So he is a successful rich jerk. That makes me feel so much better. No, I am just saying. Okay, yeah, the rent thing is terrible, but Liv, he is gorgeous. I am looking at photos right now. Sophie. What? I am just saying. When was the last time you even looked at a guy? I look at guys all the time. That is not the issue. The issue is that this particular guy is ruining my life. Fair. But did you feel any, spark? Olivia thought about the moment their eyes had met, the way the air had seemed to crackle between them. The completely inappropriate awareness of how he had looked in that suit, all broad shoulders and controlled power. No, she lied. Absolutely not. I felt rage, Sophie laughed. Okay, sure. Hey, you could always seduce him into giving you better rent. I am hanging up now. Wait, I am kidding. Mostly. But seriously, what are you going to do? That was the question. Olivia looked around her small apartment at the life she had built here. The books overflowing her shelves, the plants on the windowsill, the cozy reading nook she had created with pillows and string lights. It was not much, but it was hers. I guess I am going to pack, she said quietly. After they hung up, Olivia sat in the growing darkness, feeling the weight of it all. Then she stood up, turned on the lights, and opened her laptop. If she was going to have to move, she was going to find something. She refused to give up. It took 3 more weeks and viewing 17 apartments, but Olivia finally found something possible. A studio in a building 20 minutes from work, smaller than her current place but clean and safe. The rent was higher than she wanted but lower than the new Monroe Street rate. She could make it work if she was careful, if she picked up extra shifts at the bookstore, if she gave up her coffee shop habit and made everything at home. She signed the lease with a mix of relief and sadness, then went home to start packing. The move-out date was in 3 weeks. Mrs. Chen cried when Olivia told her, pressing a jade bracelet into her hands and making her promise to visit. Olivia was wrapping dishes in newspaper when someone knocked on her door, probably Mrs. Chen with more food. The woman had decided Olivia needed to be fed constantly during this stressful time. She opened the door and froze. Isaac Ashford stood in her hallway, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit among the faded wallpaper and worn carpet. His expression was unreadable. "What are you doing here?" Olivia demanded, anger flooding back instantly. "I need to talk to you." "No, absolutely not. You do not get to show up at my home. Miss Turner, how did you even know which apartment was mine? Your name is on the lease. Look, I just need 5 minutes." "I do not care if you need 5 seconds. Get out." But he did not move. just stood there, and now that the initial shock was wearing off, Olivia noticed he looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. Good, she thought viciously. I hope I have been keeping you up at night. Please, Isaac said, and the word sounded like it cost him something. 5 minutes, then I will leave and you will never have to see me again. The last part stung in a way it should not have. Olivia considered slamming the door in his face, but curiosity won. She stepped back, gesturing him inside with exaggerated courtesy. Isaac entered her small apartment, and suddenly the space felt even smaller. He dominated it just by existing, his presence filling every corner. Olivia was hyper-aware of the packing boxes, the dishes on the counter, the intimacy of having him in her personal space. Talk, she said, crossing her arms. Isaac looked around, taking in the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the plants, the string lights. Something in his expression shifted. You are moving. Obviously. That was the whole point of your eviction notice, was it not? The notice was not an eviction. It was a lease renewal offer. At double the rent. Same result. Isaac ran a hand through his hair, messing the perfect style. The gesture was so unexpectedly human that Olivia felt her anger waver, just slightly. I looked at your file. 4 years, perfect payment history. You are exactly the kind of tenant any landlord would want. And yet here we are. I made a business decision based on the numbers. That is what I do. What I am supposed to do. Is there a point to this? Because so far you are just explaining why you are still a jerk. His eyes met hers, and there was that pull again, that magnetic awareness that made her breath catch. The point is that I cannot stop thinking about what you said, about not knowing what it is like for normal people, about how easy it is for me to tell someone to upend their life. Olivia blinked, surprised. Oh, I grew up with nothing, Isaac said quietly. My father worked 3 jobs to keep us housed and fed. When he died, he left debts and a half-paid mortgage on a house falling apart. I was 22, trying to finish college, and suddenly responsible for my 15-year-old sister. I know exactly what it is like to choose between rent and groceries, to wonder if you will have a place to sleep next month. The confession hung in the air between them. Olivia felt her defenses crack. Then how can you do this to people? Because I learned that you cannot build security on sentiment. You have to be smart, strategic, ruthless when necessary. That is how you survive. That is how you make sure you are never powerless again. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rougher. But you were right. I have gotten so focused on the numbers that I forgot they represent actual lives. People like you, who have done everything right and are getting squeezed anyway. Olivia did not know what to say. This was not at all the conversation she had been expecting. I cannot change the lease terms, Isaac continued. If I do it for you, I have to do it for everyone, and the whole investment falls apart. But I looked into my other properties. I have a building 3 blocks from here. Similar apartment, just renovated, 1 bedroom instead of a studio. I can offer it to you at your current rent, same lease terms you have now. Why would you do that? Because you were right, and because, he trailed off, something unreadable crossing his face, because I want to. The silence stretched. Olivia's heart was doing strange things in her chest. This made no sense. CEOs did not show up at random tenants' apartments to offer them deals. Rich men did not care what struggling bookstore employees thought of them. What is the catch? She asked suspiciously. No catch. Well, one catch. You would have to have dinner with me to discuss the lease, and he paused to let me apologize properly. Dinner? Yes, with you. Yes. Olivia's mind was racing. This was insane. He was her landlord. He was a CEO. He existed in a completely different world. She should say no. She should tell him she had already found a place and send him on his way. One dinner, she heard herself say. Then we sign the lease and never have to see each other again. Something flickered in Isaac's eyes. Disappointment? No, that was wishful thinking. One dinner, he agreed. He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. My direct number. Call me when you are free. Then he left, and Olivia stood in her apartment surrounded by boxes, holding his card and wondering what she had just agreed to. She waited 2 days before calling. Pride, mostly. She did not want him thinking she was eager. Even though every time she looked at his card, she felt a flutter of something dangerously close to anticipation. When she finally called, his assistant answered. Olivia almost hung up. This was stupid. She was making a huge mistake. But then Isaac's voice came on the line, saying her name like a question, and she forgot about hanging up. I am free Friday night, she said, for the dinner, to discuss the lease. Friday works. I will pick you up at 7. I can meet you somewhere. Olivia. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. Let me pick you up, she should argue, maintain distance, protect herself. Fine. 7. The week crawled by in a mix of dread and excitement that Olivia refused to examine too closely. She told herself this was just business. A lease discussion. The fact that she tried on 6 different outfits Friday afternoon meant nothing. The fact that she spent an hour on her hair and makeup was just about feeling confident. Professional. When the knock came at 7 exactly, her stomach flipped. Isaac stood in her doorway in dark jeans and a gray sweater that should have looked casual but somehow made him even more attractive. Without the armor of his business suit, he looked younger, more approachable. The shadows under his eyes were gone. Hi, he said and smiled. Actually smiled. Olivia felt her knees go weak. This was so unfair. How was she supposed to maintain her defenses against that smile? Hi, she managed. They took his car, a sleek black BMW that probably cost more than Olivia would make in 5 years. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Isaac drove with easy confidence, navigating the city traffic while asking her about her week, her work at the bookstore, her thoughts on the neighborhood. Normal conversation. Easy. Except nothing felt normal with the awareness humming between them. The way she noticed every detail of his hands on the steering wheel, the line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled. The restaurant was not what she expected. Not some pretentious place downtown with food that looked like art installations. Instead, Isaac pulled up to a small Italian place in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, and the smell of garlic and tomato sauce making her mouth water. Is this okay? Isaac asked, and there was uncertainty in his voice, like he actually cared what she thought. I thought about taking you somewhere fancy, but this place has the best food in the city and it felt more honest. It is perfect, Olivia said, meaning it. Inside, the owner greeted Isaac by name, hugging him and kissing both his cheeks while speaking rapid Italian. She was a tiny woman with gray hair and an enormous smile, and she looked at Olivia with bright, curious eyes. Issa, you brought a girl, finally. I tell him every week, Nonna Rosa said, you need to find a nice girl, stop working so much. And look, bellissima. Olivia felt her cheeks heat. Isaac looked embarrassed but pleased. Rosa, this is Olivia. Olivia Rosa, she has been trying to marry me off for years. Because you never bring anyone here. Always alone, always working. But tonight is different, I can see it. Come, I have the best table for you. She led them to a corner booth with a view of the tiny garden out back, lit with string lights. It was intimate and romantic, and Olivia had to remind herself this was not a date, just business, a lease discussion. But as the evening unfolded, as they shared pasta and wine and conversation that flowed easily from books to travel to childhood memories, It stopped feeling like business. Isaac talked about his sister, Emily, who was in graduate school studying architecture. About how he had nearly dropped out of college when their father died, how he had instead worked 3 jobs and taken night classes and somehow graduated, how he had borrowed money to buy his first property, a rundown duplex he had renovated himself, living in one unit while fixing up the other. "I was so sure I would fail," he admitted, swirling wine in his glass. "Every decision felt like it could destroy everything. But I could not go back to being that scared kid wondering where we would live next month. So I just kept going. 1 property became 2, 2 became 5. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being about survival and started being about success." "When did it start being about the numbers instead of the people?" Olivia asked gently. Isaac was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. Gradually, I think. The more successful I became, the more I had to protect, the more I had to stay focused on what worked. Emotion was a liability. Caring too much about individual situations meant making bad business decisions. But you are here. You found me an apartment. You are having dinner with me." "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and Olivia felt pinned by the intensity in his gray eyes. "Because from the moment you stood in that conference room and called me out, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. Because you looked at me like I was someone who could be better and I wanted to be that person. Because—" He trailed off, but the air between them felt charged. "Because," Olivia whispered, "because you make me remember who I was before I built all these walls." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Olivia knew she should be careful, should protect herself. Should remember that he was a CEO and she was a bookstore employee, and they lived in different worlds. But she was tired of being careful, tired of playing it safe. And when Isaac reached across the table and took her hand, she did not pull away. His palm was warm, his fingers strong but gentle as they laced through hers. Such a simple touch, but it sent electricity racing through her whole body. "This is crazy," she said, completely. "You are my landlord, I am aware. We are nothing alike." "No," Isaac agreed. "But maybe that is not a bad thing." Rosa appeared then with tiramisu. She insisted they share, beaming at their joined hands like all her prayers had been answered. They talked for another 2 hours, until the restaurant was closing and Rosa was shooing them out with containers of leftovers and instructions to come back soon. In the car, driving back to her apartment, Olivia felt like she was floating. This should not work. It made no logical sense. But sitting next to Isaac, their fingers still intertwined on the console between the seats, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He walked her to her door. They stood in the dingy hallway that would soon not be hers anymore, and Olivia was hyper-aware of his proximity, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious. "I should go," Isaac said, but made no move to leave. "Probably." "Can I see you again? Not about the lease." "Just because I want to." Olivia knew what saying yes meant, knew she was stepping off a cliff with no guarantee of where she would land. Did it anyway. "Yes." Isaac smiled, that full, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. He lifted his hand, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, his touch feather light. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night." She watched him walk away, then let herself into her apartment and leaned against the door, heart racing. What had she done? What was she doing? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I am still in the parking lot and I already miss you." Is that insane? "This is Isaac, by the way." Olivia laughed, feeling giddy and terrified and alive. She typed back, "Completely insane. I might miss you too." "Maybe." The reply came instantly. "Maybe is good enough for now." "Sleep well, Olivia." She held the phone to her chest, smiling at nothing. This was definitely crazy, But maybe crazy was exactly what she needed. The next weeks passed in a blur of texts and phone calls and dates that did not feel like dates but absolutely were. Isaac took her to a hole-in-the-wall Thai place where you sat on the floor and ate with your hands. She took him to an underground bookstore that sold vintage first editions and rare finds. They walked through the city for hours, talking about everything and nothing, and Olivia kept waiting for the novelty to wear off, for them to run out of things to say. It never happened. He told her about the pressure of running a company, of being responsible for dozens of employees and millions in investments, about how lonely it got at the top, how people either wanted something from him or were intimidated by what he had built. She told him about her dreams of writing, the novel she had been working on for 3 years, her fear that she would always just be that girl who worked in a bookstore and never actually accomplished anything meaningful. "You help people find stories that change their lives," Isaac said one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. "That sounds pretty meaningful to me. It is not the same as creating something." "Then create. What is stopping you?" "Fear, mostly. What if I am terrible? What if I pour my heart into this thing and it is garbage?" Isaac turned to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. The touch was familiar now but still sent sparks through her. "Then you will know, and you will write something better, but at least you will have tried. I built my whole company on the possibility of failing spectacularly. You just have to decide the risk is worth it." She kissed him then, right there by the river with the city lights reflecting on the water. It was not their first kiss that had happened a week earlier in her apartment doorway, a soft, tentative thing that had quickly turned heated. But this kiss felt different, like a promise, like stepping through a door into something real and terrifying and wonderful. When they broke apart, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me," he said quietly. "Not for anything except that I want to fall asleep with you beside me and wake up to your face." Is that too much? Olivia thought about all the reasons she should say no. Thought about taking things slow, being smart, protecting herself. Then she thought about how safe she felt with him, how seen, how alive. "That is not too much," she said. His penthouse was everything she expected and nothing like she imagined. Yes, it was luxurious with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture and a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. But it was also lived in. Books piled on the coffee table, a guitar in the corner. Photos of Isaac with a young woman who had to be his sister, both of them laughing at something off camera. "You play guitar?" Olivia asked, running her fingers over the instrument. "Used to. I do not have much time anymore." "That is sad." Isaac shrugged. "That is life." "Or you could make time. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Right now." They spent the night talking on his couch, sharing wine and stories and kisses that made her dizzy. When exhaustion finally pulled them under, Isaac led her to his bedroom, giving her one of his shirts to sleep in. The fabric smelled like him, and Olivia felt ridiculously content as she climbed into his bed. Isaac pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and she felt his heartbeat steady against her back. This was fast. This was probably reckless. But lying there in the dark with him, Olivia could not bring herself to care. "I am falling for you," Isaac whispered into her hair. "I know it is too soon to say that, but I am terrible at games and I need you to know." Olivia turned in his arms, finding his face in the darkness. "I am falling for you too. It terrifies me." "Me too." "Good. At least we are terrified together." He kissed her softly, sweetly, and they fell asleep tangled together like they had been doing this for years instead of weeks. Over the next month, Olivia moved into the apartment Isaac had found for her. It was beautiful, everything he had promised. Big windows, freshly painted, a kitchen where everything actually worked. She should have been thrilled. Instead, she found herself spending more nights at Isaac's place than her own. It was not intentional at first. They would have dinner and she would be too tired to go home. They would watch a movie and fall asleep on the couch. He would look at her with those gray eyes and ask her to stay, and she could never quite say no. Her toothbrush appeared in his bathroom. Then clothes in his closet, books on his nightstand. She was moving in without either of them acknowledging it, and the scary part was how right it felt. But not everything was easy. They fought sometimes, usually about work. About how much time Isaac spent at the office, how he would take calls during dinner, how his phone was always buzzing with something urgent. Olivia tried to be understanding. She knew he had responsibilities. But she also knew he was using work as armor, keeping himself distant even when he was right beside her. "You do not have to fix everything yourself," she told him one night after he had spent 2 hours on calls about a property deal going sideways. "You have employees, partners, people you can trust with this stuff. It is my company, my responsibility. It is also your life. When was the last time you took a vacation, a day off, 5 minutes to just breathe? I am breathing right now. You are working. There is a difference." Isaac set down his phone, frustration clear on his face. "What do you want from me, Olivia? I want you to let me in, all the way, not just the parts you think are safe. I am trying." "I know, but trying is not the same as doing." The fight ended with both of them frustrated but at least talking. That was something. Isaac made an effort after that to be more present, to set boundaries with work. It was not perfect, but it was progress, and there were good days. Great days. Isaac surprising her at the bookstore with coffee and pastries. Olivia cooking dinner while he worked at the kitchen counter, both of them comfortable in the silence. Weekends spent exploring the city or staying in bed until noon, talking and laughing and discovering new ways to make each other smile. She met his sister Emily one Sunday for brunch. The woman was a whirlwind of energy and opinions, with her brother's eyes and a smile that could light up a room. She interrogated Olivia thoroughly, asking about her intentions and her thoughts on historic preservation, and whether she thought Isaac was working too hard. "I like her," Emily announced to Isaac, as if Olivia were not sitting right there. "She has spine. Do not screw this up." "I am trying not to," Isaac said, reaching for Olivia's hand under the table. Emily's expression softened. "You look happy. Both of you. I have not seen him this relaxed in years. So thank you, Olivia, for making my workaholic brother remember how to be human." Later, after Emily left, Isaac pulled Olivia close. "She is right, you know. You make me better, happier. I did not realize how much I had been going through the motions until you showed up and demanded I actually live. I did not demand anything. You did. You demanded I see people instead of numbers, that I make time for life instead of just work, that I let myself feel things again." He kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. "I love you, Olivia Turner. I know it has only been a few months and this is probably too fast, but I am done pretending I do not." Olivia's heart felt too big for her chest. "I love you too. Even though you are still kind of terrible at work-life balance and you take calls during movies. I will work on that." "I know you will." They stood there holding each other as the sun set over the city, and Olivia felt certain of what she had known for weeks now. This was it. This was the real thing, the kind of love that changed everything. But life had a way of testing certainty. The problem started small. A delay in a major property acquisition that Isaac had been working on for months. Then complications with permits and zoning. Then a business partner who got cold feet and backed out, leaving Isaac scrambling to secure new financing. He became stressed, distracted, working until 2 in the morning and starting again at 6. Olivia tried to be supportive. She brought him food, reminded him to sleep, listened when he needed to vent about bureaucracy and setbacks. But she could feel him pulling away, retreating back into the walls he had started to dismantle. "Talk to me," she said one night, finding him at his home office desk at midnight. "Tell me what is going on in your head. I am just trying to save this deal. If it falls through, I lose everything I have invested, and it is not just my money. I have investors, employees who are counting on this. I understand that, but you are killing yourself. You have not slept in 2 days. I am fine. You are not fine, and you are shutting me out." Isaac finally looked up from his laptop, exhaustion clear on his face. "I do not know how to let you in when everything is falling apart. I built my entire life on being in control, on having the answers. Right now I have neither, and I do not know what to do with that." Olivia moved around the desk, turning his chair to face her. She knelt down so they were eye level. "You do not have to have all the answers. You do not have to be in control every second. You just have to be honest with me. Let me be here for you the way you are always here for me." Something in his expression cracked. He pulled her up and into his lap, burying his face in her neck. She felt him shake, felt the tension radiating through his body, and just held him. Let him be vulnerable in a way she suspected he rarely allowed. "I am scared," he whispered, "of failing. Of losing everything I built. Of proving right every person who said I would not make it. You are not going to fail. And even if you did, even if you lost every dollar and had to start over, you would still be the same brilliant, stubborn man I love. Your worth is not tied to your bank account." Isaac pulled back to look at her, eyes wet. "How did I get this lucky, finding you? I ask myself the same thing. Well, except for the part where you tried to evict me. That was not lucky," he laughed, a watery sound. "Worst first impression ever, the absolute worst. Good thing you are pretty. Just pretty and rich, very rich. That helps." He tickled her until she was laughing and squirming, and the heavy mood broke. They ended up on the couch, talking through the details of the deal, brainstorming solutions. Olivia did not have any business expertise, but she asked questions that made Isaac think differently about the problems. By dawn, he had a new approach. A riskier one, but with potential. The next weeks were tense as Isaac executed his new plan, but he kept Olivia in the loop this time. Told her his fears and his hopes. Let her see the whole messy process instead of just the polished results. And when the deal finally closed, when everything came together in a way even better than he had originally planned, the first thing he did was call her. "It worked," he said, and she could hear the disbelief and joy in his voice. "The deal went through. We got better terms than I even hoped for. Olivia, it worked. Of course it did. I am so proud of you. I could not have done it without you. You kept me sane, kept me human. I need you to know that. I know. Now come home and let me celebrate with you properly." That night, Isaac showed up at her apartment, the one she still kept even though she barely used it, with champagne and roses, and a smile so bright it hurt to look at. They celebrated with takeout and dancing in her tiny living room to music from her phone, and it was better than any fancy party could have been. Later, when they were lying in her bed, Isaac propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. "Move in with me, officially. I know you are practically living there anyway, but I want it to be real. I want to wake up with you every morning and come home to you every night. I want all of it, Olivia." She had known this was coming. Had known for weeks that they were heading here. But hearing him say it still made her heart race. "Yes," she said simply. "Absolutely yes." Moving in together should have been a bigger adjustment than it was, but they had already figured out most of the important things. How Isaac liked his coffee. How Olivia needed quiet in the mornings before she could handle conversation. That he would steal all the blankets and she would end up sprawled across 3/4 of the bed. That they both read before sleep, and some nights they would stay up until 2 in the morning discussing books and ideas and dreams. She kept her job at the bookstore despite Isaac offering to support her financially. She needed her independence, her own space and identity outside of being his girlfriend. He understood that, respected it even. And she finally started working seriously on her novel, carving out time every evening to write while Isaac worked on his own projects. They hosted dinner parties with Emily and her girlfriend, with friends from Isaac's office and regulars from the bookstore. Olivia learned to navigate the world of wealth and business contacts, though she never quite felt comfortable at the fancy charity galas Isaac sometimes had to attend. He learned to love the small bookstore events and readings she dragged him to, even when the coffee was terrible and the folding chairs uncomfortable. Life found a rhythm. Not perfect, but theirs. A year after they met, Isaac took her back to Rosa's restaurant. The same corner booth, the same string lights in the garden. Rosa fussed over them like always, but there was something in her knowing smile that made Olivia suspicious. "What are you up to?" Olivia asked Isaac as they waited for their food. "What makes you think I am up to something?" "You have that look, the one you get when you are planning something." Isaac laughed, reaching across the table for her hand. "I love that you can read me now. A year ago I would have said I was impossible to read. A year ago you were impossible. I have trained you well. You have." His expression turned serious, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. "Do you remember what you said that first night in your apartment? When I showed up uninvited, I said a lot of things, most of them angry. You said I did not know what it was like for normal people. That I was too removed from the actual human cost of my decisions." Olivia winced. "I was harsh. You did not deserve all of that." "No, you were right. I needed to hear it. Needed someone to shake me out of the bubble I had built. You changed my life, Olivia. Made me remember why I started this whole thing in the first place. Not to make money, but to create security, to help people. I got so lost in the business that I forgot the purpose." "Isaac, let me finish, please." He took a breath, and Olivia realized his hand was shaking slightly. "You made me better, happier. You gave me a reason to leave the office at reasonable hours and to actually live instead of just working. You taught me that vulnerability is not weakness, that letting someone in does not mean losing control. I was only surviving before you. Now I am actually living." He slid out of the booth, and Olivia's breath caught as he knelt beside the table, pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Around them, she was vaguely aware of other diners noticing, of Rosa appearing in the kitchen doorway with her hands clasped to her chest, but all she could focus on was Isaac's face, the love and hope and nervousness in his eyes. "Marry me," Isaac said. "Not because it makes sense on paper, or because we have been together the appropriate amount of time. Marry me because I cannot imagine my life without you in it, because you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Because when I think about the future, every version of it has you by my side." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was absolutely perfect. Not huge or ostentatious, but elegant and beautiful. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, the stone the exact color of the dress she had been wearing that first night at dinner. "Olivia Turner, will you marry me?" She was crying. When had she started crying? Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Isaac slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then he was kissing her and the whole restaurant was cheering. Rosa was crying happy tears and someone was opening champagne, and it was perfect, so completely perfect. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a garden venue just outside the city. Emily was the maid of honor, making a toast about how Olivia had tamed the untamable, and made her brother remember how to smile. Isaac's best man was his business partner Marcus, who told embarrassing stories about Isaac's early days in real estate. Rosa catered, of course, and cried through the entire ceremony. Olivia wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Isaac wore a gray suit the exact color of his eyes and could not stop smiling. When the officiant pronounced them married, he kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks eating incredible food and exploring small towns, and making love in hotel rooms with views of rolling countryside. Isaac completely unplugged from work, leaving his phone off for days at a time. Olivia wrote every morning on the balcony of whatever place they were staying, inspired by the beauty around them and the joy flowing through her. "I could get used to this," Isaac said one morning, bringing her coffee and kissing the top of her head. "What Italy? This. Us. Having time to just be together without the world intruding. We can make time for that at home too, we just have to choose it. You are right, as usual. I am going to remind you that you said that, frequently." When they returned home, Olivia had finished the first draft of her novel. It was rough and needed work, but it was done. She had actually done it. Isaac insisted on reading it immediately, and she nervously watched him devour it in 2 days. "This is incredible," he said when he finished. "I am not just saying that because I am married to you. This is genuinely good. You need to get this published. It needs editing. Probably a complete rewrite of the middle section, and I have no idea how publishing actually works. So we will figure it out, together." He was right. Over the next year, with his encouragement and support, Olivia revised and polished her manuscript, found a literary agent who loved it, sold it to a publisher in a moment that had her screaming with joy in their apartment. Isaac picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying. When the book came out 2 years later, Isaac bought out an entire bookshelf at the reading room where she still worked part-time, threw her a launch party that Rosa catered, stood in the back of the bookstore during her reading with tears in his eyes, so proud he could barely stand it. Her boss, Marcus, who had become a good friend, pulled her aside at the party. "You know, when you first told me about Isaac, I was worried. Rich CEO sweeping in, potentially controlling or changing you. But I was wrong. He loves you exactly as you are. That is rare." "I got lucky," Olivia said, watching her husband charm a group of her bookstore customers. "You both did." Life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Isaac sold his company for an amount that made Olivia dizzy when he told her, but instead of retiring, he started a foundation focused on affordable housing. Bought properties and renovated them, offering reasonable rents to working families. It was not as profitable as his previous work, but it was meaningful. He came home energized instead of exhausted, excited to tell her about the families they were helping. "I should have been doing this all along," he said one night. "Building things that actually matter instead of just chasing the next deal. You are doing it now. That is what matters." Olivia published 2 more novels over the following years, each one more successful than the last. She quit the bookstore to write full-time, though she still visited regularly to hang out with Marcus and recommend books to customers. She and Isaac bought a house with a big yard and filled it with books and plants and art. And 5 years after Isaac had shown up at her apartment door to apologize, Olivia found herself standing in their bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test. She was terrified. They had talked about kids in abstract terms, the way people do when the future seems far away. But actually holding the evidence of a tiny human they had created together was overwhelming. Isaac found her sitting on the bathroom floor, the test clutched in her hand. He took one look at her face and dropped to his knees beside her. "What is wrong? Are you okay?" She wordlessly handed him the test. He stared at it, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and then pure joy. Really? We are really pregnant, apparently. Are you okay? Is this okay? Okay, Olivia, this is incredible. We are having a baby. We are completely unprepared. We do not have a nursery or any baby stuff or any idea what we are doing. We will figure it out. We always do. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We are going to be parents. The fear did not disappear completely, but it eased. Sharing it with Isaac made it manageable. They spent the next months preparing, turning the spare bedroom into a nursery, reading every parenting book they could find, panicking and excited in equal measure. Their daughter was born on a clear spring morning, tiny and perfect and absolutely terrifying in how helpless she was. They named her Iris, after Olivia's grandmother. Isaac cried when he held her for the first time, this strong man who had built an empire completely undone by 7 pounds of baby. She is perfect, he whispered, staring at her in wonder. How do we make something this perfect? Olivia watched them together, her heart so full it ached. This life. This family. 5 years ago she had been facing eviction, angry at a man she had never met for disrupting her entire world. Now that man was her husband, the father of her child, her partner in everything. I love you, she said. Isaac looked up, still cradling Iris carefully. I love you too, both of you, so much. The first year with a baby was chaos. Beautiful, exhausting, amazing chaos. Isaac took paternity leave, and they stumbled through sleepless nights and diaper changes, and the terrifying responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. But they did it together, supporting each other through the hard moments and celebrating every milestone. Olivia started writing again when Iris was 6 months old, carving out time during naps and early mornings. Isaac had handed over the day-to-day operations of the foundation to a managing director, working from home several days a week so he could be present. They had helped a part-time nanny named Sarah who Iris adored, but they made sure to prioritize family time. One evening when Iris was almost 2, running around their backyard chasing butterflies, Isaac pulled Olivia close on the porch swing. You ever think about how we met? He asked. Sometimes, usually when I want to tease you about trying to evict me. I was such an idiot, you were, but you got better, only because you made me. He kissed her temple, both of them watching their daughter play. I was so focused on protecting myself, on staying in control, that I had forgotten how to actually live. You reminded me what mattered. I will never stop being grateful for that. Even though I yelled at you in a conference room. Especially because you yelled at me in a conference room. Someone needed to. I am just glad it was you. Olivia leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. You know what is crazy? I was so angry that day, thought my life was falling apart, and it was actually the beginning of everything. If you had not bought that building, if I had not been furious enough to confront you, none of this would exist. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best outcomes. Very philosophical. I have my moments. Iris ran over then, demanding that her daddy come see a particularly interesting bug she had found. Isaac scooped her up, making exaggerated, amazed noises at the bug in question, and Olivia's heart swelled watching them. This was it. This was everything. Not the fancy penthouse, or the successful careers, or the money that meant they never had to worry about rent again. Those things were nice, but they were not what mattered. What mattered was Isaac teaching Iris to be brave and kind. Was family dinners and bedtime stories and lazy Sunday mornings. Was the way he still looked at Olivia like she was the most important person in his world. Was building a life together based on love and partnership, and choosing each other every single day. That night after Iris was asleep and they were getting ready for bed, Olivia caught Isaac staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just thinking about how lucky I am, how easily I could have missed you. But you did not. We found each other, even if the circumstances were less than ideal. The worst circumstances. I was literally your villain origin story." Olivia laughed, crossing to wrap her arms around him. "And now you are my happily ever after. Funny how that worked out." He kissed her, slow and deep, a kiss that still made her weak in the knees after all these years. "I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret giving an arrogant CEO a second chance. You are not that arrogant anymore, only moderately arrogant. I will take it." They climbed into bed, tangling together the way they always did. Outside, the city lights glowed against the darkness. Somewhere out there were people facing eviction notices and impossible decisions, fighting to keep their lives from falling apart. Olivia sent up a quiet hope that they would find their way through, that unexpected doors would open the way they had for her. Because sometimes the thing that seems like an ending is actually a beginning. Sometimes the person who disrupts your entire life becomes the one you cannot imagine living without. Sometimes fury and frustration can transform into love so deep it changes everything. She had been furious when a CEO became her landlord. He had been furious that he could not stop thinking of her. And from that fury had grown something beautiful and lasting and real. Olivia closed her eyes, listening to Isaac's steady heartbeat, feeling his arms around her. This was home, not the address or the building, but this person, this family. This love they had built together from the most unlikely foundation. And she would not change a single thing about how they had gotten here. Years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and ordinary moments that felt extraordinary precisely because they were shared. Iris grew into a curious, spirited child who loved books like her mother and had her father's determination. They had another baby, a son named Oliver, who was quieter but equally wonderful. Isaac expanded the foundation, working with other developers to create more affordable housing across the city. Olivia published 6 novels total, each one exploring different aspects of love and human connection. They bought a beach house where they spent summers, building sandcastles and teaching the kids to swim. They fought sometimes, as all couples do, about disciplined strategies and whose turn it was to handle the 2 in the morning wake-up call and how much was too much to spend on a birthday party. But they always came back to each other, always remembered that they were on the same team. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Olivia back to Rosa's restaurant. The owner was older now, moving a bit slower, but her smile was just as bright. "My favorite couple," she exclaimed, hugging them both. "Where are the babies?" "With Isaac's sister tonight. We wanted an evening just us." "Good, good, you sit. I bring you something special." They slid into their usual booth, the same spot where Isaac had proposed. Olivia looked at her husband across the table at the gray starting to show at his temples, the lines around his eyes from years of laughter, and felt overwhelmed with love. 10 years, she said. "Can you believe it? Feels like yesterday. Also feels like forever. Is that possible?" "With you, everything is possible." Isaac reached across the table, taking her hand the way he always did. "I would do it all again, every moment, even the part where you hated me." "I did not hate you. I hated what you represented. And now you represent everything good in my life. You and the kids and this family we built. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. Same. Always." Rosa brought them food and wine, and they spent the evening talking and laughing, remembering their journey. The obstacles they had overcome, the joy they had found, the life they continued to build together. When they finally left, walking hand in hand to the car, Olivia looked up at the stars just visible above the city lights. Made a wish, even though she had everything she needed already. Let this last forever. Let us keep choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives. Isaac pulled her close, kissing her under the streetlights. What are you thinking about? How glad I am that you bought my building. How grateful I am for every twist and turn that brought us here. Even the fury, especially the fury, it made everything that came after even sweeter. They drove home through the city they both loved, to the house filled with their children and their books and the life they had created. And Olivia knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man who had started as her villain and become her everything. With the family they had built from love and stubbornness and the willingness to take a chance on something uncertain. She had been furious when a CEO became her landlord. He had been furious that he could not stop thinking of her. And from that, fury had grown the greatest love story of their lives. Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the person who turns your world upside down is exactly the person you need. Sometimes getting evicted is actually the beginning of coming home. Olivia had learned all of that and more from Isaac, from their life together. From the choice they made every day to love each other despite their differences, because of their differences, with everything they had. And as they tucked their sleeping children into bed that night and climbed into their own, wrapping around each other the way they had for 10 years and would for 50 more if they were lucky, Olivia sent up a silent thank you to the universe for that eviction notice. For the fury that had brought them together, for the love that had made them whole. This was her happily ever after. Hard-won, unexpected, absolutely perfect, and she would not have changed a single moment of the journey that had brought her here.